everybody. It's a pleasure for me to see you all today. And today we have Kedar Karmarkar, who is coming all the way from the west coast of USA, early morning. He's an ardent photographer, and he photographs, as we told in our creative, um, uh, capturing warbirds. I would like to, by the time the audience join, I just want to tell everybody that Gyanadab is an NGO which is there in Pune, India, and that we celebrate literature, arts and culture, and we avoid politics, activism, and religion. Under Gyanadab, we have three platforms. One is Guldasta Urdu Hindi, where we do programs on Urdu Hindi literature. Then we have the English Book Club, where we do the programs on the English books, which is held on every Sunday at 6:30. And the third very interesting platform that we have generated is Gyanpedia. Now, Gyanpedia is a very interesting WhatsApp group, and if anybody wants to join, you just put your phone number in the chat box. Here we do very interesting programs. We call people from all over the world who are doing things very differently. Like we have today Eraj Borucha, who is an expert in nature and environment. Then we have Apuro Bahadur, who is an expert in railways. And then we have somebody from Ajay Singh from Bangalore, he's a person who specializes in water. We have many people who do photography of birds. Today, for the first time, we have somebody who's doing photography of warbirds. I now request Sandhi, who's also from the west coast of USA, to please introduce Kedar and to begin the program. My only request is that during the program, we'll be taking a small 36-second break. We'll explain to people about a foundation that we support by doing programs on Gyanadab, that is Nityasha Foundation. It is an NGO which is working for children suffering from type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is something like a pediatric diabetes where children do not produce their own insulin. And we support about 150 children. And by these Gyanadab programs that we conduct, we request people to donate to Nityasha Foundation. I'll be putting a small video in the middle of the program. We will ask Kedar to take a break. And please share screen or capture the screen when you do that. Over to you, Sandhi. Please introduce Kedar and today's program.
Yes. Good morning and good evening, everyone. It is my privilege to introduce Kedar. Since the dawn of human civilization, humans have looked up to the skies and always wondered if ever in their lives they would be able to fly like birds. And that zest, that thirst to be able to fly came into reality only about 120 years ago, which is very surprising. Now, being in Pune was a special treat for me to be in Loga, because you got to see a variety of airplanes from de Havilland Vampires to Canberra to B-24 Liberators to Marut HF-24 and so on. And we were also blessed with the British Council Library, where you could see all kinds of aeroplanes. So from time to time, I put my interests of aeroplanes on Facebook. So in November, when I shared an amazing story of Lockheed 1011 Trijet, one of the common friends between Kedar and I, Vivek Datta, saw that post and said, "Hey, you ought to talk to this guy named Kedar." So he introduced me to each other, and here we are today. We have a lot of common interest about aeroplanes in general, not only war. Like with anything else that happens, things are put to good use and bad use, so are aeroplanes. But today, we are going to talk about wars and warplanes. It is my privilege to introduce you, Kedar, and he's going to take us through an amazing ride. So here you go, Kedar.
Namaste. Namaskar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever. Thank you, first of all, Sandhi, and then even I think I need to thank Vivek Datta as well, because that's how he connected us in the first place. And I'm really privileged to be here, really honored to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. So we just want like, the beginning of all, right? Like as Sandeep mentioned, he was kind of privileged to have a military base, nearby, and where he could see all the planes, and then go visit and all that. And I grew up in Bombay, now called Mumbai, and I really had no access to any planes or whatever, no military bases nearby. But I guess the way I see it is, I just got intrigued when I was a kid. I used to read a lot of those commando comics, right? That used to be there, black and white, sketches of World War II stories. And unfortunately, as again, like Sandeep mentioned, we have to talk about like warbirds, because that's the thing I do. Like I don't do generally civilian, airliners or general aviation. I just capture military aircraft, and here in at least in the US, when we say warbirds, it's basically a term for mentioning like vintage aircraft, like World War II or onwards, or even World War I onwards. So in my case, I just got hooked on those commando comics, and I used to draw sketches, and obviously was inspired by all those stories, and all the nerds. I was kind of nerdy as well. I used to do a lot of sketches. I used to we had a British Council library, but I used to scour like those old newspaper shops. We in Bombay we used to call them Raddi shops, where we used to get like aviation week and space, technology of like last year, or many months before. And that's how I used to like kind of, read through and get technical on it. But that's where I think the seeds were sown, if you will. And obviously plan A was to join the Indian Air Force. Obviously, after time went on, plan A didn't work out. So here I am, plan B. And photography was actually not like planned or whatever, right? It just happened. Like when I came down in '99 in the US, I used to stay near Moffett Airfield, which was deactivated by that time, but it still houses a small bunch of C-130s and helicopters of the Air National Guard, of the rescue wing. And my apartment was like right on the approach path of that. And so before I kind of skipped to California, the one thing that I skipped was obviously all this interest was fueled by was supported by my parents, who used to give me books on World War II and aviation, and so it was like the incentive stuff, right? Like you secure so many marks in maths or science or whatever, then we go buy you books, because books was the only thing that time, right? There was no internet, there was no computers, at least when I was growing up. So and then even my uncle, he used to also support me. So he gave me some books and all those were, so I had some good support for hitting plan A. But obviously, plan A didn't work out. So then now we fast forward to the US. But before I go there, I just wanted to kind of share some of my sketches, if you will, because that's how, like, that's a precursor to photography, right? We always see pictures, and we always see, things that inspire us, and that's how we kind of, go forward, right? So just let me just share my screen here, and we can probably, okay. So I hope everyone can see the screen.
We can
Yes.
see your screen. We can see your screen.
Yeah. Cool. So I think this was one of the most popular posters, back then, which at least my generation guys, they always like. I think this was like on everyone's doors or walls or whatever. A very unique thing in
Are you
those
sharing
days.
something? Because you can only see your backdrop.
So
Something.
yeah,
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll have to hold on.
You need to put on your PPT, I think.
Yeah, I think I'll have to share the screen. There you go.
It's still the background.
I think. Oh, where did it go?
Are you able to share?
Hold on. Yeah, I think what's happening is when I go maximize, it's going to a different screen. So that's why I think I'll need to
Gather your screens, yeah.
No problem.
whiteboard. Sorry. Or I'll just do full screen on this one. Like
Yeah.
forget about that one. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just try to maximize my window with this one and then just go whatever we can get. Share screen.
Allah.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, you have to select the first one, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think this was if you can now see the screen, sorry guys for that. But I think the Yamaha RX100 was every young man's dream, back then, or every young kid's dream, I would say. And then obviously, having a fighter back there, like obviously I didn't know the difference between like a MiG-29 and a MiG-27, which was like a strike, aircraft, not a fighter per se, but still, in those days, anything that was in the military, that looked small, that was kind of agile, was like a fighter, right? So I think this was like the poster that I think each of us had on their walls or on their doors. Whoever wanted to like kind of look upwards towards the sky, as Sandeep mentioned. So this was kind of like the foundation, if you will, of the future journey. And then, as I said, like I used to be like very nerdy. So it was not just like the external aspects, right, of anything, like how big a missile is or how fast it goes or how does it sound. It was more about like trying to find the internals. So I used to, as I said, like those Radhi shops used to give me a lot of old magazines, and I used to get a lot of information from there. So this was just done for a I think I went to Wilson College, and that's where I on 10th when I passed my 10th. That's when I drew this sketch for one of the exhibitions out there. And then one of I think the most comprehensive stuff that I have ever done, is I think this cockpit display of a FA-18 Hornet. And this was from a book given to me by my uncle. And it was those Salamander series books. And it was from design to deployment. So it had like all the design, like what happens to a fighter from a design to a deployment phase. And they had all the details in it. And like there was this cockpit layout that was there. And I think this was, I did it in 92. So almost 30 years back, I guess. That I did this, and this was all done by hand. Like, there was no like all those automation tools or whatever. So it was just rulers and, angles and all that stuff. And, my writing was also good at that time, as you can see. But this was kind of like the most, very elaborate, comprehensive, sketch that I've ever done. So this is kind of like just focusing on the heads up display of the shot. So like this part of the cockpit. So it looks like there's a gun selected. You're going at 600 knots at a heading of whatever 176 at 5,500 feet and so on. So it gives like a lot of like I had actually written down all those numbers and figures and all that stuff. So I was kind of pretty nerdy at that time. This is kind of like the engine panel, if you will, giving you the engine, the exhaust, I think temperature, the RPMs and so on. So that was kind of like the journey. So any questions, Sandeep?
No, these are awesome drawings.
Yeah. So that's what happened. So 99, I was here in the US. No photography on my mind. Obviously, there was no even the chance of seeing whatever I had read. I had no clue that I will be seeing those in a couple of months, because I landed here around May, and then there was an air show in Moffat. And I was literally like a kid in a candy store where, of all the things that I had read about, like, the F-16s, the F-18s, the F-15s, helicopters, transports, all those things were there actually for me to see and touch and, talk to the guys. So I was really excited. Photography didn't happen until I would say 2005 or six, like seriously, because like before that, again, like, you get to a new country, you start from scratch. So the focus was on like work, getting a job, securing a job, whatever, and then, the home front, right? I'm not, I'm not making my whole earnings from photography. It was not even not there at that time. So the focus was more on work and home, and once kind of things got stabilized, at one place, then I could focus on like, or at least have some time for photography. So my airshow journey started off like around 2005, 2006. Again, getting used to like the new thing called internet, whatever. So I jumped on the wagon, and there used to be a forum called fencecheck.com long time back. Very good, watering hole for aviation photographers. It was basically run by aviation photographers for aviation photographers, right? And many people were there, very talented guys who used to share their stuff. And so I learned from it. There used to be at least one friend, Glenn Bloor, who I always don't, I never miss to call him out, because he and I, like, we started off getting this, hey, you need to get this lens, this camera, because I used to rent at that time. I didn't own lenses. So he used to like kind of give me pointers. Then we used to like, the one thing that we used to discuss back and forth was like, taking the shot was half the battle won, and then processing the shot is the next half of the battle. And especially with digital, there is that, your laptop or your whatever PC is your darkroom, right? So we used to go, share ideas back and forth together, like, hey, how does this edit look, or maybe should I do something here and there. So that's how, like, things started off. And that's how my photography journey started off. I went to air shows, exercises. Then I found out that there is something called as exercises that happen, red flag and all that stuff, and that's how I kind of like waded into this new world. So while the flow of the presentation is going to be, we'll start with some of the personalities, the photos that I took, and then we get into like the Warbirds, because the World War II fighters is actually what inspired me. And then we get into the jets, and then that's how we kind of like the presentation goes. So the next shot, yeah.
Kedar, what is interesting, as everybody is, one of the things when we do photography is to be able to visualize and create imagery in front of you. And what is interesting about you here is, even before you had a camera in your hand, you're visualizing as if you're sitting in the cockpit. You're taking pictures, you are drawing, you're doing things, you're already imagining. And that's a very good first step that I see in your at the start of your journey.
Right. Yeah, I think towards the end, I remember the one trip that I did with my dad. We went to Fort, which is again which used to be the heaven of all the whatever foreign books, as we used to call it, right, at that time. And then there were like two books that we selected. Like, one was information on military aircraft and some photos, and the other was just pure photos. And I was like trying to make up my mind, like, which one should I take, because obviously they were expensive at that time. So at one point I said, okay, you know what, I know the information on this one. I really don't need the information. I'll just go for the one with the photos. And it had some beautiful photos in there as well. I still have that book with me. So as we go ahead, right, like, so beginning with some of the personalities, I was talking to like Sandhi and Farooq when we were talking about, and they mentioned that, hey, do you have any like famous shots of any famous personalities? And then this is the one that I could remember. Obviously, he is, Buzz Aldrin or Edwin Aldrin, the second human to, step foot on the moon. And I think this was at Nellis Air Force Base during the 60th anniversary of the US Air Force. They had an air show, and I had signed up for, media, because I was supposed to write an article on the air show and all that. And one of the incidents that I remember from this was his sense of humor. We were kind of herded in a room where, he was supposed to give some sort of speech. And at the end of the speech, there was a journalist who, asked him a question. He's like, sir, when you stepped on the moon and you looked back at Mother Earth, what was the first thought that crossed your mind? And I still remember he took a pause, understood the question, and then he, kind of like remembered it, like, and then he just, blurted out, like, yeah, I looked at Earth and I said, man, that's one, long way back to Mother. And then we all kind of, burst out laughing. So that was like the story behind, this shot that I remember. Like the different personalities that I've crossed through, in my journey here. The other thing is the next shot is obviously of our boys in blue, as we call it. This was back in 2008 when the Indian Air Force came to Nellis, and it was actually a big, huge undertaking, because you're taking a set of like 8 or I think 10 Sukhoi 30 MKIs. I think there were two tankers and one transport, IL-78 and IL-76, and come all the way from one end of the earth to the other. So, and it was actually awesome to have this, to have the Indian Air Force participate in the premier, Nellis, the red flag exercises that happen at Nellis Air Force Base, which is kind of like the top of the top exercises, right? And it was kind of like a funny story, because I remember back in, like, since I had some good experience here in the US, photographing military aircraft at bases, I thought it would be the same process for India. So in 2007, I went on a trip back home. I packed my cameras and then I went home, and I thought that, hey, I just, will find a phone number, I'll call someone, and then, I'm on the base, right? And that didn't happen. I never even took the camera out of my bag. Like, I never even unzipped my bag, right? So I didn't find any phone number. I didn't find any email, nothing. I just, had a good family vacation. And then on the way back, I remember I found some, email, webmaster at af.nic.in or, whatever. I don't remember the exact one. But I just threw a dart in the dark. Like, hey, if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't, whatever. And after and I didn't give much thought to it. After, I think, a couple of months, there was actually a reply to that, and it said, "Hey, since you are in the US, why don't you contact your US consulate, the Indian consulate in the US in San Francisco?" So I'm like, okay, that's doable. So I contacted those guys. Again, like after 2 weeks, I get an email say, "Hey, you need to contact the attaché, the Indian Air Force attaché in Washington." I'm like, okay. So I contact there, and after I think after a week, I got a call back. And it was, I think, if I remember right, it was Air Commodore Jolly, Rakesh Jolly, I believe, who called up and said, "Hey, why are you trying to get stuff done in India when we are coming here?" And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So that's how the whole journey started with the Indian Air Force, where I could, get along. I went to Mountain Home Air Force Base, where they initially came to, do some orientation exercises with the US Air Force. And then this shot was taken in Nellis. I think on one of the days when we were having the Air Chief Marshal come and visit these guys. So this was like the shot from that day, back in 2008. Lot of friendships, developed over the years. I still am in touch with, with some of them here that I see. Then this was the book that I made on that, the 2008 participation of the Indian Air Force. This was in 2009. It was, and again, it was like kind of like, harnessing the power of technology, because I am sitting here in the US, text, like writing the text, editing the photos. And then one of my friends is in Bombay who's kind of trying to do the business, and the printer is in Pune. So we were all having this late night meetings and all that stuff to get this in time for Aero India. And here is the former Air Chief Marshal Fali Major, to whom I presented this book during Aero India 2009, which was kind of the next year. Okay, hold on. Yeah, I probably need to start with this. So again, in 2016, the Indian Air Force, again with, I think it was, I don't remember the number, but it was a mixed force of Sukhoi 30 MKIs from Bareilly, if I'm not mistaken, 15 Squadron, and then 14 Squadron was the Jaguars that came by, and obviously with the tankers and the transports. But with, like, of all these shots that I've taken, obviously I've shots of the exercise and the aircraft and all that stuff. But one of the best candid shots that has got many many more likes and all that stuff is this one. And I really like this one because this was just a group of guys huddled around an aircraft, and I asked them, like, hey, can I take a group shot of you? So the first shot of was obviously a formal, more composed, everyone is like very serious, or at least just trying to smile or whatever. And I told them that I will flash like a V sign, like a second sign, and I just want you guys to do your pilot stuff, right? Whatever, whatever you guys do as pilots, coming off from a flight line. I just want you to be candid. And so I took the first shot and I flashed the V sign. And I remember, like, obviously, some of the guys are shy, so most of the the Indian guys walked away. And there was this the US Air Force guy in between. He was the only one in that whole group. And again, he was like the aggressor, so he was acting as the bad guy during the whole exercise. And then he gets in and he says, hey guys, come back here, let's do some of the pilot stuff that we do. And he just got in the fray. And then all of these guys, around him, they were like, okay, going like this, like that, and all that stuff. Some of those guys are like laughing at the camera. And I just love this, love this shot more than any of the composed shots, because the composed shots are obviously kind of made up. But this is the one that I'm really proud of, and I really like, just the heat of the moment, right? Just having fun. So that was there, and then I think that's the end of the kind of the personality section. But then let's go back to the Warbirds, because this is where life began for me, to look upwards, right? The Messerschmitts, like if I don't know if you have what kind of Commando comics. I think they are now a colored version these days, but back in the in my times it used to be black and white. And so again, Spitfires, Hurricanes, Mustangs, Focke-Wulfs, Messerschmitts, the whole galore, right? And this is one shot that was shot in now you guys won't probably believe this, but there is actually a place called Madras, or it is pronounced like Madras in the US English, but it is actually Madras. It's the same spelling, up in Oregon, where Sandhi lives, in fact. So this was shot over there, where the lead aircraft, the aircraft in the front, is a German, Focke-Wulf FW-190 that was the name, which was a German aircraft. And then obviously the one behind is flown by, if I'm not mistaken, Greg Anders, who is in Washington, I believe. But I think whose father was the legendary, Bill Anders, the astronaut as well, right? And the ace of World War II. So
Kedar, what a travesty to have two people who were fighting coming together and flying airplanes side by side.
Yeah, yeah. The Focke-Wulf was flown by Brent Connor, who's like the firefighting guy out of Ericsson. So there's the Erickson aircraft collection in Madras, Oregon. That was the Focke-Wulf from those guys, and then Greg Anders brought his P-51 from, I think, Washington, and then that's how we had the shoot. And this shot I think is again, like, it almost looks like, the Mustang is like literally bearing on the Focke-Wulf, but it's actually it's a shot that was done during a transition where we were transitioning from one formation to the other, and I just saw this, like, this imposing composition, and I'm like, I need to get this shot because it almost looks like the Mustang on the heels of the Focke-Wulf here. So obviously it looks like, and because of the zoom, there is like the parallax where it is kind of like, it reduces the actual distance between the two guys. But it's actually, all this thing is like, obviously, safe, and it's briefed and all that stuff. Because again, during air to air, we are in a different plane. They are also in a different, they are in their aircraft, and things are happening a lot more faster than on the ground when you are just talking. So flight safety is paramount, and we brief it, and we everything is safe when we do this. So that was kind of like the start of the Warbird series, if you will, right? This was another shot again. I work with a guy called, and he's also a great photographer and contributes his to a lot of magazines. A guy called Scott Slocum. He's been there again, like very well known, person, photographer in the warbird industry, and we basically go around, shooting with him, and he had this vision of, like a Japanese Zero being shot down by a Hellcat here, as you can see. So we had so this was again in Southern California, a place called Camarillo, and they have a museum there run by the Commemorative Air Force, which is again, like, deals with a lot of like warbirds, keeping history alive and so on. So the Hellcat was flown by, I think, Steve McCartney, and then at that time, and then I think the Zero, the Japanese Zero with the smoke on, was flown by Robert Herberg. And I still remember the Zero could emanate smoke, so we said, okay, let's let's try to do something. So we started off with like a formation like this, and then we told basically Robert, who was flying the Zero, to just kind of like start the smoke on and then kind of dive, simulating like, hey, this guy like just shot the Hellcat just shot the Japanese Zero, and it's kind of like going down the waves. So kind of like an action shot, and I was glad that I could capture it really, really in a nice way, like sharp, at least from that perspective. So again, hurricanes, like I know like the Battle of Britain was like more glorified for Spitfires, but I started reading about hurricanes like long back, and their fights in like North Africa, even in the Indo-Burma campaign, there were like a lot of hurricanes before we saw Spitfires. So that romance was always there with the hurricane. And this was in the Military Aviation Museum on the East Coast, where we shot this. I think it was a morning flight, and there were still clouds with the sun kind of peeping through one of the holes. So it was kind of like shimmery water, and it was kind of like the channel, if you will, right, the English Channel, if you will. So a very moody shot, from that perspective.
Hey, Kedar, whether this shot or the previous shot, how do you get this shot? I mean, how far are you in the leading airplane, and compared to those two airplanes, where are you normally situated? How far back?
So normally we start off with like a couple of wingspan away, just to have room for maneuver if we have to. So we start off with that, and then once we are stable and all that stuff, then we start moving them around. And then it all depends upon the comfort of the photo ship pilot and the target pilot, right? Like, if I want to get him close, then how comfortable he is. If he can come close enough, then they sometimes come close enough. Sometimes, they are far away. If you are setting them for a break, for an inside break or an outside break, then it depends on, how we want to situate them. But yeah, it's pretty, but not far away. Like I need to use like really huge zooms, but it's typically like, a couple of wingspans away. So we have some room for maneuvers, if you have to. But yeah. So this was again the Messerschmitt Me-109G Gustav that the Military Aviation Museum had acquired. And again, it's an original Me-109. Like they had the Bouchon versions, which was there during the Spanish, Civil War. But those were Bouchons. They were not Me-109s, and I don't like them. I like the Me-109, the original design. So I went here again. This was kind of a sunset, but I kind of did a black and white, conversion on that one as well. So this is again like Mike Spaulding, the chief pilot at the museum, flying the Me-109, and it's got a very like a sweet, a different drone, like the noise of the Mercedes DB engine. It's the Daimler Benz engine. It's a very different, like, it's almost like a jet, if you will. Like there's a small whistle, so it's very very unique, sound of the Me-109 or BF-109. Some guys might try to correct me.
These are of course all old piston engines, right?
Yeah, exactly. World War II. So this was again like, so the uniqueness of this airframe is this is a Royal Indian Air Force airframe. So it actually served in India during the Royal Indian Air Force days, and then even in the Indian Air Force. And again, like it had the markings of the Southeast Asia, I think the Southeast Asia area or region, whatever they used to call it, SEAC signs, which were different than the Royal Air Force signs. So they had this blue, roundels. That's how the Royal Indian Air Force started. And then this actually served in post, independent India, and then it was trucked over here. This was again like a shoot that we wanted to go in early in the morning, but then, there was this Camarillo Valley which was shrouded by fog. So we had to go in the afternoon, and then actually you can actually see in the shot how the camouflage actually is very effective. In the shot of like between the mountains and the color scheme that's there on the Spitfire. This is again a Griffin powered Spitfire. So this is a Mark 14, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Hey, Kedar,
Yeah.
yeah, can you also tell us, about what was the chase plane you were in when you shot these, and also, is it like canopy to canopy, or you actually are sitting in the back of the plane with open air access, and then you look back? Can you give us a little bit of detail?
Right. So basically, these are some of the photo platforms. Like, and all the planes that were shot before, they were like shot from a beach bonanza, which is kind of the same, but it has one engine in the front. This is a beach Baron, where it has two engines on the side. But it's typically the arrangement is like this, where we basically sit, the door is taken off, so you get like a a view outside from the wing to your fuselage. That's how your view is, and that's how you shoot these guys. So they will basically start off here, because that's what the view that we have, and then we move them around, however we want to move them around. So this is just one view from the beach Baron. One time that I shot the Zero, sorry, not the Zero, the Oscar, the Ki-43 from Madras, was from the backseat of this SBD, dive bomber, in fact. So I kind of sit, opposite side, like looking back at the tail, and I kind of slide the canopy a bit ahead once we start shooting. And that's what this is one way that the air-to-air shoots are conducted, where you have some guys, then we start off again, like because you have the whole view from looking back, we can maneuver the target aircraft much more freely, right? In this one, only thing is, like, there's a whole lot of wind and noise, so you have to do most of the signaling by hand signals, because it's very difficult to kind of, duck back inside, tell what you want to your pilot, who will relate to the other pilot. Instead of that, the things are much more faster if you just do hand signs, up, 5, down, whatever it is. So that's one of the view is good, but the communication is challenging, I would say.
I'm sure you don't drink a whole lot of Coke before getting on this plane.
In fact, it was freezing on that flight, so I was like really freezing my butt off in that back seat over there. This is one where we do it's a small transport. There's a group in Europe that I fly with, the aviation photo crew, and then they basically have these short skyvans, which are used to do paradropping and all that stuff. And they were actually pretty small transports with the back hatch. We open the back hatch. We obviously are all harnessed in with a cable secured to the fuselage or to the floor rather. And then this is the kind of the view that we get from the tail back out. And then there are windows on the side that we can have them alongside for the windows, and then we can take shots as well. So that's one way that we do some of the shoots. This is again the typical from a tanker, from a KC-135, doing a mid-air refueling of again coincidentally the Oregon Air National Guard F-15 Eagles from Portland. So this was shot in 2012, and that's kind of like your view, like the boom operator's view, if you will. So he flies this thing called as the boom, and this is the receptacle, which is in the receiver aircraft. So the plane comes in near, and then he flies, he guides the planes near as they come by, and then he flies the boom, inserts the boom into the receptacle, and then transfers fuel, and then off they go, right? So that's one way we kind of do it. I think, and then obviously you can hitch a ride, back seat in one of the other fighters, and then go alongside, and then there are a lot many other things. But this is kind of like some of the photo platforms that I have flown in. Like I've flown in a L-39 as well, trying to take the shot of a MiG-21 trainer, which is in I think near Houston or near Dallas. Sorry.
So Kedar, another quick question. I'm sure the camera is moving and shaking. So is it you basically take it at a high speed shutter, or you use the new modern technology of image stabilization?
Yeah, it's a good question. Especially for the fighters, a long time back, I realized one thing, that if I use high shutter speed, then I'm going to freeze the propeller, right? And that's not going to look natural. Like I cannot have a still looking propeller flying through, flying through the sky. So you have to go slow shutter speed especially for blurring the propellers, like as you see in all these pictures. So it is a challenge, because you are up there moving. The subject is, or the target aircraft is moving. There might be whatever wind vibrations and turbulence and all that stuff. For me, like there is technology that you can put the camera on a thing called a gyro, where but it's bulky and all that stuff. But then I just I just shoot with my hands, and then using the image stabilization within the camera, just that, and I get my propeller blurs and all that stuff. I don't use I've tried the gyro, but it is very bulky and it is very hard to move around with that. So I'd rather prefer my hands and my body, and it's like actually behaving like a sniper, where you control your breath, you control your you be steady with your hands, grip everything like tightly, and then go slow speed shutters. But to get sharp images, you need to be like really steady in that configuration. Talking about slow speed, I remember this shot that was taken from the back of the Skyvan. And it's very difficult again, like to maneuver the Skyvan, which is like at stalling speed, and these guys are like trying to haul the coal in the throttle, and trying to get up to the speed of the Skyvan. So everything is like really moving up and down and all that stuff. And this shot I actually shot at 1/10 of a second. So again, lucky shot. You basically, again, as I said, you behave like a sniper and then let loose. So Like one of my friends said, like I used to say, better be lucky than good. But Zimmerman, who's one of the other friends also as well, he actually corrected me. He's like, it should be like be better be lucky and good because you need to be good to capitalize on that opportunity.
So what's an average number of shots you take to get one good shot? It's like 15 shots and you will barely get one good one. Is that how it works?
Yeah, like say like because there might be like bad weather or jinking and all that, but yeah, typically around like 15 to 20 shots you get one that you can totally walk away with. But yeah, exactly. It's and digital makes it actually better because now it's digital. You don't it's not film that
Exactly.
you're like yeah you're like wasting your money and film and all that. So digital actually helps that. I think digital
Absolutely.
photography is actually very good for developing your photography further, instead of keeping you constricted into a certain set of things that you can do. So yeah.
And not to mention instant gratification.
And which is actually good because I remember one issue that I was there in Salinas. I had a teleconverter connected to my lens, and I was shooting, and then the focus within like the viewfinder was good, but then with the shots I was like it was soft focus. I was like, what's happening here? And then I disconnected the teleconverter, and then I actually just put the lens and then shot, and it was a teleconverter which was causing a problem. But you can see the impact of this, because if there wouldn't have been instant gratification, I wouldn't have known, and I would have spent the whole day and my film shooting the whole thing with just soft focus.
Exactly.
Yeah. So any other stuff that we want to kind of go over? I can always
No, I think we are going pretty smooth. Continue, because
okay.
this is, I know, I'm sure we can spend 10 hours, but we have time
Right.
limitations here.
Yeah, exactly. I would tell you like probably like maybe 2 stories, and then we'll try to wrap up, right? I think I will just flash this one because it was just a glorious morning that we were out there at Key West in Florida. Just a very tropical storm had passed by, reflections and all that stuff. So pretty good. But one of the things that I wanted to say was like the story behind this shot. It's actually pretty interesting. So we were up there. I was with the group called COAP, the Center of Aviation Photography, with Rich Cooper and Steve Comber, and we were up in Tucson. And this was a Royal Netherlands Air Force detachment of F-16s, which trains there. And in this shot, it was Nicky who was the deck commander, and he was flying alongside our Skyvan. And while shooting, I had like maybe like he did a lot of stuff. So we had like, especially I had shot a lot of photos during that one flight, and we basically like not tend to change anything within the air to air portion, because things are loose. Things going loose, flying outside, flying out and all that stuff is like a safety hazard, if you will, and it might actually screw up the whole thing, right? So we basically tend to not keep anything loose, loose things around. So my card was actually full, and there was one shot in the card like that I could take, and or I could like sit and delete pictures and then create space for more shots. But basically I was in a dilemma, because he was flying alongside, he was doing some Dutch rolls, like that. And I'm like, should I capture the moment, or should I look at the camera and start deleting pictures, trying to create more space? But the whole problem was, if I do that, trying to create more space, then I'm not looking out, and then I might miss the shot. So I was like, you know what, I'll take the shot. So I patient, which is a kind of like against my nature, but I held on patiently, looking through the viewfinder if there was something different that was happening. And basically, at one point of time, he was doing this, and he actually went over, and I'm like, okay, there's something happening. And I actually kind of readied for the shot, and he actually went like upside down and popped a flare, and that's when I took the shot, and that was it. So this is the story of that one shot, the last shot, I would say. which is which is pretty I was again lucky to get that flare popping out at that last moment. But that was the
I,
last shot on my card that day.
I'm so glad he was upside down and not you.
Yeah, yeah. I think the other shot I would say worth is again like it's not a aircraft, but it's something unique that I have in my collection, and that's actually a Russian tank, and you can actually see the shell streaking away, like just a snippet of it. Like this was back in 2018 when I wanted to shoot the Russian stuff, so we all again went to this exposition called Army 18. And so the first day, I think we shot at the airfield. The second day, we went to the tank range. And again, these guys were like just shooting out of the blue. So it was like you are like, so in this case, again, because it is digital, I was like just taking like one, two, like just random shots. And whenever something used to happen, then I just used to, put my finger on the trigger and then let it, burst. So this was like one of those moments where it actually like basically just again lucky where I was just taking random shots, and then I saw something that I anticipated something was happening, and I just put it down, and it just went burst of shots, and then I could capture this one. So
Hey, by the way, Kedar, this is such a fascinating journey. You can go over a little more timing wise, because these are all what you are sharing with us is extremely fascinating. Couple of questions. How do you keep up with high-speed jets? That means your mother aircraft has to be going at least close to that speed. And are there magic settings that you use for fast jets?
yeah, so for the air-to-air, for the fast jets, it's actually very forgiving because you don't need to have the higher shutter speeds. But yeah, like typically we match the speeds of both. So the modern jets, they can actually hold formation behind slow aircraft like the Skyvan. The older ones like the Phantoms, they can't hold formation. So we just tell them to do passes behind the aircraft as they approach. So we again try to kind of like either match the speed or at least fly as slow as you can, but then and then the other thing is there is also another way of where you're converting the time into distance, right? Where if you were to do just straight passes, then obviously the time is is not there, and you need to kind of like again use an optimum speed. But if you just do like S turns while you are approaching, then you can have a higher speed, and you can still you're traveling a higher distance, but within the same area, if you will. So again, that increases the exposure of us getting a shot, right? Because if you were to go below us, then he's gone. So there are ways that we can kind of keep things now. From that perspective, right? Like this, I think the recent shoot that I did with air to air, I think this was the most difficult from a piloting perspective, and even from a photographic perspective, because normally what happens is we have the target aircraft follow us, or we try to match speeds, and but we are both basically doing the same thing, going in the same direction. This was a shoot where they were doing a pilot checkout on the Grumman Albatross, the aircraft in this case, and they were doing their pattern work, because they had to like the pilot had to get checked out on the aircraft, and he was doing like splashdowns and takeoffs and the same thing again. So it was on its own path, and so it's going like 60 knots, and we were going 120 knots almost, like in the beach barren. So Bernie, who was the photoshop pilot on this hop, he actually did an awesome job, which allowed us to capture the moment. So we used to start off parallel to the Grumman as it was taking speed, getting heading for takeoff, and we were tried. So we are going twice almost, but he did manage to keep most of the view. So the way he kind of ran this was we used to run circles around the guys who were flying this. So we used to start like left hand parallel going in the same direction, and then we used to like kind of circle and then go back on his right wing going the other way. So that way we could like keep maximum, exposure for us to, or within sight for us to, actually capture the aircraft. So that's one way of, kind of having the target aircraft within sight. And then it becomes a photographic, again, challenge, because now you can't pan. You are actually like, you are panning when you are in the same direction, but now we are like going 90 degrees, which is a very, very, very difficult shot. And now we are going opposite. So he's like going, twice the speed this way. So very, very, challenging shoot. But yeah, sometimes you have to, improvise, adapt, and get the max, from whatever the situation is. So in this, in fact, I like the even there is a pattern in the disturbance, if you will. So that's why I kind of like have like this wide angle shot where you have like still water and then all the water which is like kind of disturbed, but it still has a pattern in this one.
Do you use any special filters, or it's run of the mill and then you post process?
Yeah, no filters, because I want to get the maximum light that I can. So I don't use filters. There are some guys who will use polarizing filters, so circular polarizers and all that, but I don't use any. I just go with the normal, normal lens. Maybe there might be a UV just for protection or whatever, but again, I don't use that as well. Which other thing? So let's talk something about the Indian Air Force stuff. And again, this is kind of like a very unique shot. Now the MiG-27s are all retired out. They were retired, I think, in December 2019, if I'm not mistaken. But this shot was again very, very lucky, because I was visiting in 2012. I took a vacation from Thanksgiving, which is November end, to New Year, which is December end, and I came to India. And out of that, I think out of those 5 weeks or whatever, I was home hardly for a week, and all my relatives gave me a hard time. Like, hey, have you come here for us, or have you come here for doing your stuff? And I actually came there to do my stuff, which was basically roaming around, Indian Air Force bases. So in this December 2012, they were actually practicing for a live weapons exercise in 2013, the next year, and the MiG-27 had this, at least during the practice, they had this run, a gun pass, if you will. And now the gun on the 27 is also kind of like a 30 millimeter, Gasha cannon that they call. And it's actually like, again, like it's a beast to see, as you can see it from here. But it was like, and again, it's a very super cropped shot, because these guys are like really high when they start diving. But it was like a great light on the subject aircraft. The sun is, to my right, and I could see the sunlight glinting off the spent, cases of the ammunition. Now they never did that on the final day, because it was like causing flame outs and it might, have some problems. But this is something unique shot that I have of the MiG-27. All the others,
What's beautiful about it is you can even got the pictures of flying shells.
Yeah, exactly.
Underneath, which is very beautiful. Do you ever turn off image stabilization while shooting, or it's always on?
No, I just keep it on, because we are like panning along with this aircraft, so I just keep it on. Like some of my friends, they will put it off. They will only do it for like propellers, or if they are doing like really slow shutters. But I just put it on, and just be there. Just leave it there. And this is another shot of the MiG-21 Bison with the rockets that you can see. So in fact, you can see one of the rockets just coming out of the tube here, which is again pretty like these are again high speed shots, but then you need to like really pan with the aircraft. They just come out of like, first of all, you need to like keep your neck on a swivel, because they are like coming from left and right, and you need to like get, then once you have a bearing, then you start tracking, and then you just track with your cameras. In this shot, you can see that the bombs are still falling, as you can see on the targets. This one is like almost close to ground, and then detonating. But again, this was, I think, during the practice as well, because again, it was beautiful sunlight, from the left in this case, and it was awesome.
Is
This
it
was
mostly
again.
on? Is it mostly on manual focus, or you're always on
Oh
automatic?
no, autofocus. Because things are changing. You can't keep,
Yeah.
yeah. Things are moving at a very high speed. So here is another like the typical rocket, strike. You can see the rockets like just in below the canopy here, and then one is just exiting. There's one already exited. So in fact, one of my friends back in I think 2013 or whatever, he was actually flying this when he shot the rockets, and I showed him the shots later on, and he was like really yeah, he was like really surprised. He's like, holy hell, this is how it looks like from the outside. It looks like it's almost on fire. I'm like, yeah, because he's sitting inside and he's focused. Like he doesn't have time to see how did it look, right? So it's kind of funny, And so this shot, as you can see, the rotors are totally blurred out, right? They're almost like full circles. And this is again shot at 1/15th of a second. And man, if you haven't been around the Chinook, then you haven't been around helicopters, because the rotor downwash, it is like a massive hailstorm.
Yeah.
And we were up here in the desert, so it's literally like sand and rocks and everything being thrown at us. Like literally, it's like poking us. Like, and I'm actually using the camera as a shield to my face, because it's just everywhere. And even at that, I kind of like I'm like, okay, let me try some slow shutter speeds here. And I got the shot.
How do you normally use Smart or Matrix? What kind of metering?
I think it's again, it's those like Nikon has one of those. There's one smart metering or whatever. I just keep it on that. I don't deal with I don't play around with light that much. I just do everything in post. Because again, like when you are in the heat of things, you don't have time to process. You go through all your settings and all that stuff. Like there's some things that you leave it for the camera to do best, and then the other things that you can do post. But yeah, there's not much time, and especially in an A2A shoot, time flies, as they say. Like it literally flies. You have to be very quick. Again, this is the new shiny toy in the Indian Air Force inventory, the Rafale, with the afterburners on the engines taking off. That was one of the good shots. So this is a shot that I actually like. One of my friends who had approved my clearances and all that, he was basically telling me to like, hey, go to the range. You will get all the people dropping stuff. And I'm like, no. I'll stay back at base. I just want to get this bomb truck shot of the Sukhoi. So this Sukhoi is actually hauling 26 of these bombs. And I wanted to get this shot, so I stayed back at base. I'm like, I want to get this one shot. So sometimes like you're kind of crazy enough.
How long are your runs? They're like a couple of hours.
How long are the
runs? When
the runs?
Yeah.
On the weapons passes, it's pretty much like I think they have one run. But again, like the whole from start to finish, it maybe it takes hours, because the whole thing is sequenced, right? You have other guys dropping in front of you, that guys dropping behind you, so you always have like a time on target. But like the pass itself is like maybe a minute or maybe a couple of minutes. But the actual like from in fact, I would rather go back as well. Like, it's not just from takeoff to landing. There's mission planning as well. So it actually starts off very it's a long drawn process to actually like what we see is just a snippet of the tip of the iceberg, as I call it, right? But yeah, it's a whole lot of planning behind the scenes. This is again like the C-130 with the Umaid Bhavan at Jodhpur. So this was like, again, I was there with my 500 trying to like actually fit, because he was taxiing and he was closing the distance. So at this point of time, I had to cut off the the tail light here. But yeah, I was trying to get that one. This shot is, I kind of like this shot where you have a so he's a Navy captain, Jaideep Maulankar, in a Air Force Tejas. So he was the chief test pilot of the Tejas program, and he was going up for a display in 2013, I believe, Aero India. And actually, very the one story that I remember, like very great guy, very influential on how the Navy Tejas came out and all that stuff. But one of the stories that I still remember of him was I had asked him, like, sir, like, what's the difference between a normal, combat pilot or a squadron pilot versus a test pilot? And he had an interesting analogy. He said, you will never find, like the actually accomplished, Hindustani classical singers. You will never find young guys. You will always find, like, guys who are like soaked, middle age to late age. He's like the test pilots are like that, because you can't be you have to get that experience, you have to develop that knowledge, and you have to write manuals. The squadron pilot will take those manuals and then deploy them in combat. But the test pilots are there to like, they themselves have to be experienced, have to be knowledge, have to be mature. So he had that interesting analogy from, like, comparing the young classical singer to an accomplished classical singer. That's what I remember from that incident.
Quick question, Kedar. Shooting military aircrafts, especially India with all the security clearances, how does one go about it? Air show is definitely a good opportunity, but it must be difficult to get an access, right?
Yeah, it is very, very difficult. It's months and months, some, like in my case, years of sending them email, getting the right contact, speaking, follow up. It's you have to be, like, on your toes, like, every time. It's not easy. Like, at least in the western side, or the Europe or US, there are laid out procedures that everyone has to follow, and then at least we follow, and things happen. India is pretty, like, kind of like very, very unique in that way, where it's very difficult to get access, first of all.
What's the story behind?
Yeah, good.
What's the story behind the 4-jet? The one on the right hand side, is that illusion, or which airplane is this?
Oh, this one?
Yeah, the one on the right. Yes, that one.
Yeah, so this is a IL-76 transport, dropping a pallet out from the cargo bay. This was again during the live weapons. I think this was again during the training in December, the practice stuff that they were doing. So again, like, beautiful light, sunset, mellow, light on it, and then it was like dropping the pallet from the back end. This is actually a very interesting, thing to see from inside as well, because, like, once you kind of release the brakes, the whole thing just you let the thing fly out, the parachutes open, and then they actually pull the whole pallet, and it just rolls off the aircraft. Like, you have to be really, really careful not to be in the way, otherwise you are, like, smashed, whatever, smashed piece of meat at the end of it. It's very fast, and it happens like like almost like in a jiffy. But it's very interesting. I've never been there, but I've seen, like, videos of things going out, and, like, really, really fast.
I was wondering if you could tell us the story behind the Phantom. That used to be the Vietnam time.
Oh, this one. Where is that? This one, right? The F4 Phantom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was actually a very interesting shoot as well. This is, like, this Phantom is obviously an ex-US Air Force Phantom, and it took a act of Congress for the Collins Foundation, which is, I think, a private charity type thing, I guess, to actually own and operate this, not own, I would say, because it is leased to the Collins Foundation, but to operate this F4 Phantom. Because the military birds once they are retired, they are like not actually like the very, very few of them you can like fly in private, hands. And this one, like again, I think with Iran owning F4 Phantoms and all that stuff, with with spare parts and all that stuff, like there's some regulations against operating Phantoms. So it took an act of Congress to actually let the Collins Foundation fly this. And the day of the shoot, we were supposed to so we were in a B-25 Mitchell bomber, because that is a bomber that can match the speeds that is required for this F4 Phantom to at least hold with the B-25. So we were in that Mitchell, and because we are like slow and whatever, we launched first. We said we'll go out first and we'll hold in that area until you guys show up. And the timer, I think if I remember right, it was supposed to be like 6:15 or 5:15 or whatever. Like they were supposed to show up just before the sunset. So we launch. We are like slowly trundling our way to our hold area, and we reach our hold area. We are circling, and then we are like looking at time, and I'm like, okay, there should be here. I don't hear any radios, and it's it's past that time. It's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm like, and we are all watching the sun. The sun is going down. There are clouds coming in the way of the light, and we are like, okay, will the shoot happen or will it not, or what's going to happen here? And then like we were still like just kind of numb, sitting there with the air hitting us, and suddenly we hear the radio crackle, and then these guys show up. And now we're shooting them, the light has gone down. So what we were expecting like an easy shoot now becomes challenging, because the light is gone, and I'm like really getting like really slow shutter speeds at like normally for this shot, like I require like at least an f8 f/8 aperture, but because of the light and all that, I'm like operating at f/4, and the shutter speed is still low. So then I'm like increasing the ISO to hit the light sensitivity up, so that I can get a decent shutter speed. So it was literally like I call it like a touch and go situation with this shoot.
Yeah. So Kedar, this might be an inflection point where we show a video to all our attendees.
Yeah.
I would like to request Farooq to take a minute to show that, and I'll hand over it to Farooq before we resume.
Right.
Just to inform everybody that as I told you in the beginning, that I would like to speak something about why we do these programs. And we do these programs to collect money for Nityasha Foundation, which collects money for giving medical donations to children suffering from type 1 diabetes. So with your permission, Sandhi, I'll just show a small video so that people understand what we do in Nityasha.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. And I will be putting my mobile number in the chat box. If anybody wants to donate, then please send me a WhatsApp message. I will contact you and send you the details where you can give your donation. So over to you, Kedar, and you can continue. Yeah. Kedar, you
So
can
Farooq, we will go for another 5 or 10, and then I'll take panelists and everybody else's questions. And I have been asking questions all along and keeping up with the chat. So back over to you, Kedar.
Yeah. Yeah. So just kind of like a closing story on this one. This is again the F4 Phantom, which is a very famous, very well known jet of the Vietnam War era. Again, like this side, they have the Colonel, Robin Olds. He was a colonel during that time, but again, a very well-respected, well-known, U.S. Air Force. I think he retired as a brigadier general. He's no more today, but very influential and very effective, flyer, kind of leader as well. And then this is again like in Vietnam colors. It used to be his jet, like Scat, I think 7 or something. I think like that's what the name he used to put. But yeah, that's kind of like the cover story on this one, on the F4 Phantom. Obviously, my favorite, the topmost favorite is the Blackbird, the SR-71 Blackbird, and again, it's very got a very curious, back history to it. The way it was designed, by Lockheed during that time, and then how they imported like the titanium that was required from Russia or from the Soviet Union from at that time to build the aircraft that would overfly the Soviet Union and get pictures. Right? It was kind of like funny story, but the whole design and all that stuff, like for the, I think it was the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken, that those guys designed this, but pretty unique design, and Mach 3 plus, 3 times or more than 3 times the speed of sound, and again 85,000 feet is the unclassified altitude, I guess. We really don't know how fast and how high it actually went. But
I had heard the ceiling to be at 120, but as you said, not everything is still classified, including some of the photography technology.
Yeah, exactly.
And for the people who don't know, Cayley's Skunk Works principles are also used nowadays in high tech, in getting a lot of the innovations and quick ways of doing things. Those principles are still used in many other industries.
Right. This shot I particularly like because it looks like a snake, and I think it used to fly from Okinawa in Japan, and then they used to call it the habu, named after like a black snake on the island, because it now like kind of like looking at this, I can actually say like, yeah, okay, those guys were right. It actually does look like a snake. Obviously, this is again F-14 Tomcat. Whoever has seen Top Gun, knows this aircraft. Again, I was like really lucky. Again, this is like back in 2004. This was one of my first times that I used, like that I think stepped out of California. In fact, that I went
and
to.
This is retired now, right?
Oh yeah, this was retired in 2006. But the story of this shot was, I still remember that story, is they were doing their display and then they went ahead, and then there was like a pause of like 30-40 seconds or whatever, and but again I was like looking for them because I was not like talking with anyone or whatever, so I was like having my neck on a swivel trying to look where they went, and I see them wings folded back, swept wing, and like really high speed coming in, and then I had my camera ready and I clicked it. And after they went, like the guys who were like talking or they had like who were distracted, they literally missed this. Like they didn't know like, oh, so what happened, because it just like whoosh, it's gone. And that's when the commentator said like, okay guys, for those of you who missed this swept high speed low level pass, they are going to come from the left. So that's what I remember of this shot of the F-14. This one is again kind of like unique, where this is a A10 Warthog, A10 Thunderbolt 2. That's the official name, but then everyone calls it the Warthog because of the way it looks, and all that stuff. It's kind of like a very weird looking aircraft, but very effective. And then obviously the gun is equally famous as the aircraft because it's the GAU-8 Avenger 30mm cannon, right? And as you can see, like it was doing shoots at the Barry Goldwater range, near Tucson. So this was a shot where you can actually see the bullet, go heading out of the Warthog as it kind of came out, and it again, the firing is also a very a unique sound that you get. They call it like the burst. So if you see hashtags with like BBB, RRR, TTT, kind of like brrrt, that's how it kind of like sounds. Very very unique sound of that cannon. And then this is one story where this is at Nellis Air Force Base, and it was really kind of interesting backstory to this, where they were doing the air power demo, and these guys used to come in, kind of like dive down as if they are attacking something, and then turn away and fire one or two flares, and then repeat the same thing again, like keep repeating the same thing again. And we were also like photographers, right? Every time they kind of they came by for a turn and they were popping flares, we were like trying to get the flares and that. And it went on for a while, and we were also like getting tired. I'm like, every time he comes, he just pops like one or two flares, and I'm like, okay, like should I put my camera for this? But then again, you don't know, right, when what will happen. And so this time, when I actually put the camera on when I was tracking the A10, I think the pilot was just tired of popping one or two flares. He just let her rip. So in this case, as you can see, like he's almost emptied his left hand side flare bank, and he's starting the right hand side flare bank. As you can see, the first flare going out from here. You can see the red here. That means that this is pretty much populated. Like there are a lot of flares, and then you don't see anything here. That means it's all are spent. So actually, like he just let her rip, and he was like done with popping one or two flares. He's like, you know what? Let me get rid of this, I guess. But he was just bored, so he just let go the whole flares on that pass. So pretty interesting. So again, like for those guys, right? Like especially my wife. One shout out to her is obviously like she lets me do all these things. So that's why I'm here to share all these things with you. But like for me, like my wife is like, hey, you're shooting the same F-16, in that one shot, that place you went to, and then this place you went to, it's the same F-16. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just it's a different F-16, right? Or a different light, as you can see, right? Like this is the aggressor, the ghost that I shot in Nellis in Las Vegas at night. So I put flashes, my flash off camera flashes around it, and I shot this one. And then this one is shot in Alaska in December of 2019. And actually, when I shot this, I wanted to get kind of like a silhouette stuff. But then the one thing that I realized is I got these flares, the sun flare of the sun, obviously, the glint from the heads-up display, and then the beacon. So it's kind of like a unique shot for this one. And then obviously, it's a two-seater 16. So again, again going into the sunset is on the sun is on the left, and it's a very crimson skies. So it's just like the different light that you can get, the different behavior that you can get, like vapor or whatever. Like this one is also retired, right? This is supposed to be retired. So as they say, like in the Hollywood movies, you see, right, like the CIA guy saying, hey, this never happened, I was not here, right? That kind of a thing. So these the F-117s were retired in 2009, I believe, but they are still flying today. So it's a funny story on this one. Again, like these were flying at Fresno Airport, which is 2.5 hours away from my place. And yeah, I like went there, like started at 5, I think 5 o'clock in the morning, reached there by like 7:30, because I knew that the takeoff time was around 8 or so. And we were not even sure on that day whether these guys are still there, because no one saw them at the airport, or they went home the previous day. So we just hung around, and these guys took off at like 8:10, 8:15, a couple of them, and then they just went home. So it was like really lucky that I was there to capture, at least this one, because a lot of friends have captured them, like, in the desert, off the coast of California, like Southern California, a lot of times. But I have never like caught these guys after they were retired. So it was kind of like good to have them in my viewfinder.
So Kedar, we can go forever, as you say, as we
Yeah.
say. Things. I'm also watching the time. Can we go to the last blue photograph at 5? I think you have, and tell the story as the last one, and then we'll open up. I mean, I'm sure you can take another 2 hours because each and every photograph is
Mm.
absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
And it's like there is only so much shrikanda you can eat. After a while, uh, every
Yeah.
photograph is just outstanding. So pick your, if not mine, pick your the last final one, and then I'll open it up for people to ask
Sure.
questions for some time.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'll probably go for this one. Where we were, I think Thunder over Michigan, they were having I think there were 11 Corsairs that showed up for the air show, and we were shooting with 5. And as you
Wow.
said, like the one like you have to take like 20 shots to get to walk with one shot, from that shoot. So it's kind of like the same thing here, because the more airplanes you have, the more dynamism you get, and it's called like the accordion effect, because actually it is like once you see you after like whatever 30 shots, you might get you might walk away with 2 or 3, with everything, everyone kind of like neatly lined up, neatly separated at the same distance. So this is a very, again, a very tough shoot for even like the photoshop pilots and all these guys.
I especially like the lady sitting in the front of the airplane, second one.
Yeah, that was the World War II nose art, right? Which was very famous during, very popular during that time. So yeah, so again, it's like every pilot holds his formation against, like, with some marker of the aircraft to the left, and then at the same time he's like making sure that he is visible to us, because if he is visible to us and we are visible to him, then everyone's visible to everyone. Otherwise, then you might be hidden, or then you might be down, or whatever. So again, very tough shoot, and you walk away with like 2 or 3 shots out of that shoot, just to have everything, this thing lined up perfectly, separated, equally and all. So
So
again, like,
Kedar,
yeah.
for the sake of time, first of all, uh, thank you so very much. This is like a feast. It's also an never-ending feast that we can keep on going for hours, and especially enthusiasts like me and a lot of people and photographers here on the panel. We are deep into photography, and this is never-ending. But for the lack of time, we had to stop. So what I'm going to do is ask Farooq to come again before we leave and open it up for people to ask questions. I also want to say these programs are done quite often in view of art and culture and science and music. We do a lot of programs that are what I call wholesome, and in support of Nitasha Foundation to support children who are born with type 1 diabetes. So be generous as you enjoy. Think about somebody else's happiness as well. So let me open it up, and Farooq, hand it over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
At this moment, I would like to invite the panelists. Freddie, would you like to say something?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
One thing I want to like to ask is, what is the equipment that you use?
What is the equipment?
The body, the lens.
Yeah. So it depends. Like I use from Nikon. I used to shoot film with Minolta. But then when I went a digital way, I went with Nikon. So I use like right now I'm using a Nikon D850, D500, and then a Z and a Z9 as for the bodies. And then the lens, it depends upon, like, if it's an air-to-air, then I use my 24 to 120, or I use a 7200 or even an 8400. Right? It depends. For the ground shoots, I use like 500 prime, and then I have a 100 400 on the Z9. Yeah, different lenses. It depends upon what kind of application is.
And when you do these shoots, what is the setting that? As you
So
said,
again, like,
as you
yeah,
have
so
said
if
that
it's
you to keep a very low this thing, shutter speed and
Yeah, so for the jets, it is basically f/8, aperture priority, and it also depends upon whether I want to get like the from the like nose to tail, kind of view, or so then I will do f/8. If I just want to get the head-on shot where the pilot and nose, then it might be f/4. Again, but for the jets, typically aperture priority. And then for the propellers, it's typically shutter priority with a speed of like, I start by say 1/100 or 1/125, and then it again depends on how do I vary it.
Okay, I would now like to introduce you, Kedar, to Dr. Eraj Barucha. He is an avid photographer himself, but he photographs nature and environment. And
Hello, sir.
Dr. Saab, please say something.
Yeah, sure. Hi, good evening, everybody. Kedar, this was brilliant and very, very fascinating for me. As a very small boy, my aspiration was to become a fighter pilot. And, we had a very close friend. His name was Minu Engineer.
Oh,
Minu was group captain in charge of Lohegang. So he would take this small boy and dump him inside the different parts of the Lancaster.
oh,
What it was like inside. But later on, I sort of graduated to being put in the vampires and finally the hunters. So I had this beautiful sort of spectrum of what I thought was absolutely brilliant. But, this is also the photography you're doing is, of course, technologically very, very good. But it's also part of heritage in a way, because
yes.
photograph these old planes, it's like any other heritage value. Like you like to look at the Taj, or you like to look at Ajanta and Ellora.
True.
Planes are like that. So are, of course, for me as a Parsi, cars, right? So
Yeah.
I would E-type Jag, and I would like a Ferrari of the 1950s. So
Right.
this is something that I think is part of our history. So machines and human ingenuity is something that comes out so beautifully in your presentation today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Fortune of flying in a small Beechcraft many, many times, a 4-seater Beechcraft, with a man called Dr. S.V. Bhave. And he was from Pune. He was my colleague surgeon. And we did many sorties for various things like photographing flamingos from the air,
Nice.
photographing black buck at Regudi, about 150 kilometers away. And finally, we did 17 transects in that Beechcraft over the down forest. And for the first time brought in geoinformatics into India using those photographs.
Wow, awesome. That is
It was fun.
really
It was fun to do. So Kedar, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. But it's really a cool thing that you got to fly in India, because it's very difficult to, like, first of all, get your qualifications and then maintain the aircraft and all that stuff. It's really a great thing.
Oh, we had to take an Air Force pilot with us as one of the passengers. We had great difficulties in getting it passed because we had a British ecologist with us. Person who got repeatedly sick on those 3 flights that we took over the downs was the Air Force pilot.
See, Dr. Barucha,
it was a very bouncy and really, really very difficult to take photographs. I was using a Hasselblad between my feet.
Oh, wow.
To get a hole cut in the bottom of the plane.
Oh, man, yeah.
It was really crazy.
I can only imagine. Yeah, with the whole bouncing and the camera and the whole.
Especially when you had to take a turn and come onto the next transect, which was very, very tight.
Right, yeah.
It was a great experience, though. Thank you, Kedar. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I would now
Dr. Barucha, one other thing that is very interesting is just being part of the Pune. Your experience and my experience with fighter planes, it was easy to just get onto the bike as a boy and just stand outside Lohgaon and watch these Canberras and and
Oh,
vampires
yes. Oh, yes.
and liberators flying. And if, as a boy, it is fascinating just to hear the roar of engines.
Yes,
So
yes, absolutely.
there is something special to be talked about being in Pune at the right time.
Yeah.
Okay, I would now request Apurva to say something. Apurva, would you like to add something?
Yeah, well, one question, one confirmation which I need is the first team of people you showed at Nellis Air Force Base. They are from Pune because they're the
Yeah,
rhinos.
it was a mix. It was primarily 20 Squadron, but then you had
The
pieces
rhinos.
from 30 Squadron, 31, depends.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The second question is that who pays for the sky show? I mean, do you as a group charter a short skyvan and you pay for
Yeah,
your
so
seat? And
so
who gets the
normally
right hand seat? Who gets the right hand seat near the door?
yeah. So basically the groups like Scott, he has his own, two planes and he flies them around. So we actually pay them. We pay him to, get on the shoots and photograph planes. The same with the aviation photo crew in Europe as well. Like they do the whole legwork and they are chartering that plane, and we are like, we pay them and then we get on board and then we shoot.
And you have no understanding with the photographs that they are free to use your photographs or something like that. Do you share one copy with them or something?
Yeah, like especially like with the especially with the aviation photo crew and the subject pilots, right? Because they are mostly military.
Okay.
We do share with the crew. Same thing, with here with the Indian Air Force, whatever. Like if you had gone to Lohegao after say 2008, most like I was there in 2009. I'd gone there for a day just to visit the 20 Squadron, 30 Squadron guys who had been there at Nellis. And I could see like my photos, on most of the walls on these squadron buildings.
Yes.
So yeah, like personal use and then squadron use, even in Air Force brochures,
We'll use that.
so it's kind of like mutual, like they
Yeah,
give us access and then we give them photos.
Yes.
Yeah, so Kedar, I just want to inform you that Apurva is an avid photographer of rails,
Oh, okay.
especially diesel engines. That's his favorite, And
Okay.
Because I can't photograph aircrafts. I'll be shot if I get near it. But railways, I can
know,
I can go and lick it. There's no problem, right?
Yeah, I
People
know
will welcome you
exactly,
abroad.
because-
Yeah. So
So
that
if
is
you
why.
ask him, if you ask Wikipedia calls him, they find that nothing is there in railways. So they ask him, he's the Wikipedia's Wikipedia on railways.
Nice.
That's not true, but okay. Thanks so much.
No, but like one of my friends here, like he's into engines, into like railway engines, and he keeps
Are you
telling
talking about
me,
Vivek Manvi?
No. Like he's one in there's one in Cisco. He
Okay.
used to be like I used to be in his group, but then I moved off to some other group.
Okay.
But he used to like the way I used to talk about planes, he used to talk about trains. Like, hey, this engine.
What
there's a full
is the
form
name?
for,
It's
this.
a very small community. So who's this? What's his name?
His name is Chandra Balaji. I don't know. There's one more name to it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like
Yeah,
basically
but
we call him-
Vivek Manvi is here on this chat, who's a railway enthusiast and a aircraft. I mean, he's a flight.
Okay.
He's there on as Viman photography on airliners.net.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah, I think that thing is common because I've got another friend here called David Honan in Washington State,
Okay.
and he's also kind of like both. From like he's into like he started with trains, and now he does planes and trains both. It's all both.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I will just
Thank you.
request now Sudhir to say something. Sudhir, can you please?
Hi, Kedar.
Camera,
Thank
sir.
you very much for an excellent presentation. I mean, it was very thrilling, almost like being in the aircraft yourself. And looking
Thank
at
you,
it so close up. I had a question. I mean, do you only do military aircrafts, or do you also do sport flying, gliders, anything that flies? Anything else?
So for me, it's mostly military and the World War II, onwards, like the Warbirds. I will do civilian stuff if like I'm there. Like I was at like Sydney once, so I went there. Just I had a 1 day spare, so I was like, okay, I'll just hit the airport and I'll come back. But again, I won't like I don't specially go there for something civilian. I'll just go there if something's there. But otherwise, it's mostly military and warbirds. Those are kind of like my attention span is there. Otherwise, it's not.
All right.
Okay.
I am a glider enthusiast, so I was wondering if we had any good pictures.
Oh yeah, okay.
Gliders
In fact,
that I can put up on my.
I did my gliding in Deolali, Nasik. When I was in #1 Maharashtra Escort in Bombay, NCC. So we used to go to Nasik to get glider training.
You flew the T-21s or?
No, I think we had we had that one glider that Nehru sat on. What was that? It was an old one.
Rohini.
No, not Rohini. It's a Russian. Primorates.
Primorates. Oh, Primorates.
Yeah, Primorate was.
Okay.
So I think only like 4 or like 8 were built or something like that. And then so we there was one Primorate, and then there was a second one which was the Ardhara or something. That's what they call it, I think. If I'm not mistaken. But the Primorates was like, we loved the Primorates because it didn't have like a very huge wingspan.
Yeah.
So it was like, for a trainer glider, it was like very pretty, you could control it within turbulent winds. With the Ardhara or something, I'll have to check my logbook if I have it. But those had like really long wingspans, and it was like very difficult to control. The Primorates was like a small tank.
So,
Tank of a glider.
So I did most of my gliding in Pune, Hadapsar.
Okay.
Now I do a little bit of paragliding also. So.
Okay, nice.
Kedar, I think it's about time to end the program, but there's one last question. Marcio Souza has put that, Kedar, how do you manage to get sharper images with long lens? Can you share with us some tips and tricks to nail the focus? Even in slow shutter speed. So, Kedar, there will be many questions. Would you like to answer this just now, or you'd like to answer it later?
I can do it like right now. So basically, it's like, if you are doing long shutter, if you are long focal distances and slow shutter speeds, the only way to do that is, as I said, like you have to be like really steady with your hands or get a gyro, and then then you can really maintain focus and get sharp shots while blurring the other stuff, right? But yeah, that's there's no magic trick to it. It's just you have to kind of adapt to that.
Okay, so Sandhi, I think I will request you to please give a vote of thanks to. I can see a bright sunlight coming down your left-hand side, and so it's good morning for you. Please give the concluding words.
Yeah, as I started with saying, the human species has always been looking up into the skies and wondering when one could be able to fly like an airplane. And I think to that extent, what the treat that we got today is in concert with our humanly vision to be able to look up. The only difference here is now with Kedar's vision, we were again in the plane looking at other planes, and what a phenomenal feast it was. And I'm personally, and also on behalf of Nityasha Foundation, as well as Gyanadab, I want to thank you as a group. Please, you will always have a seat at our table. Anytime in the future, as you come, we shouldn't be needing to invite you. You just say, hey, I have a new collection of photographs to share with you guys. Can you give me a slot? And we'll be here. We were enthralled and enjoyed your. And please come here again. And thank you very much again from the bottom of our hearts.
So
thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So thank you, Sandhi, and I would like, with the permission of everybody, to end the program. And before we end, I'll just play that Nityasha video again. And in case you can click the image of the Google Pay or the whatever the bank details, please do that. Or I'll put my phone number in the chat box. You please WhatsApp me. And I'll just play the video, and with that, we'll end the program. And thank you very much, Kedar, Sandhi, and all the panelists. You have been a wonderful audience, and people have been really enthusiastic. And I'm surprised that so many people know so much about photography, and everybody wants to know more, and that's very nice. Thank you very much. I'll just play the video, and we'll end the program. The scan code is there on the screen, and the Nityasha org is also there on the screen. I have put my phone number in the chat box. If somebody want to screenshot that or copy it, do that. And with the permission of everybody, I will end the program. Thank you, everybody, and good night. And have a wonderful day, Sandhi and Kedar in the west coast of USA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.